Kasim, how are you feeling today?
Daniel, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed.
A little overwhelmed. That's a first. How come?
I've said yes to too many things.
And how does that feel?
It's funny, I don't want to stop. I had this realization a few days ago. I have what I think people term as the paradox of opportunity, meaning I just have too many opportunities coming to me. And what's interesting too is the answer to that might feel obvious. It's like, well, stop taking the opportunities, but each opportunity that comes is bigger than the last. And so it feels it would be ridiculous for me to turn some of these down. And more than that, I don't want to. What I want to do is I want to figure out a framework, a flywheel, and a collection of resources that I can put together that would allow me to seize all of these opportunities without feeling overwhelmed. And so the overwhelm is real, and it frustrates me a little because I haven't solved for that yet, but it excites me a little too because I know I can.
Hmm. So it seems to me that like you're stuck a little bit in between, but perhaps the word stuck is also incorrect in a way because you know that you have the internal resources that can take you from point A to point B. It's just, it seems to me that you're quite excited to find a way how you can solve this puzzle that can actually take you from point A to point B. And I think owning a business very much like that. So thank you for starting off with a real kind of situation. Because owning a business, going from one problem to another, sometimes it feels like you're solving a problem and you're creating another one. And then you're solving that problem and you're creating another one.
Every problem solved is just a new problem created in a different way. I think that's exactly true. And until it's not, in which case you're out of business. Isn't
Yep.
that funny? We get to the end of the hamster wheel and it just means that we're dead.
Yeah. Or else you're bored. You're ready to move on,
Right.
perhaps. So it's kind of ironic in a way. The moment we stop solving problems, the moment we might have outgrown the role, we might have outgrown the business as well. And you've been there from uh, from what I from the little research that I did. You've been there in that situation. How how did that shift your sense of self?
I sold a business in 2022, which I think is what we're referring to.
Yep.
And I that was my identity. I was the Google Ads guy. I built the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world, and I built my whole identity around that. I don't care about Google Ads. Fun fact, open air conspiracy, I've never run a Google ad campaign myself end to end in my life. So, I wasn't really a marketer. I just played one on TV to steal from Ryan Dice. And when I sold the business, a bunch of things happened at once. The first thing that happened is I was rich. And that's a fun thing to happen, especially I was a welfare baby. So for me, being rich has always been the goal. And that's an interesting to have happen because money doesn't make you happy and money makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
And as soon as I felt safe, that tipped the domino in the direction of me wanting to do things because they're meaningful instead of me just wanting to do things because they're profitable. Because when you don't feel safe, you'll do just about anything to feel safe.
Yeah.
In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's close to first, right?
Yeah.
And so once I felt safe, then it was like, well, gosh, now I want to do things because they matter or because they're meaningful or because they're fun. And another thing that happened is I lost my identity. I wasn't the Google Ads guy anymore. I wasn't even an agency owner anymore. I wasn't a business owner any longer. And there was some, you sit around in a bathtub of gasoline lighting matches, right? Like trying to figure out what's going on. So in all, it's been largely positive.
Okay.
But I still haven't really figured out what I want to do, where I want to go, who I want to be, which is also probably why I keep saying yes to everything. Because there's no buy box. If you're a cardiologist, you know what to say yes to and you know what to say no to. If you walk into a cardiologist's office and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a great idea that will improve the efficiency of carburetors.
Yeah.
A cardiologist gets to say, I don't have anything to do with carburetors. I'm a cardiologist. Like I'm
Yeah.
ends up being the exclusionary vessel through which you
Yeah.
view the world. And the most I've got is I'm an entrepreneur. And the problem with being an entrepreneur is there's very little that doesn't apply to, So we'll see how well I do.
Hmm. Well, in my coaching practice, I would ask this question if I was having this conversations that what are the three things that comes to mind when so if I ask your friends about you, what would they say about you?
Man, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. That worries me because I think I'm something of a chameleon. I think they'd say I'm all over the place.
Okay.
Like I've spread myself too thin. I think they'd say that I'm authentic. I think I've reached a point in life now where what you see is about what you get. That wasn't true 20 years ago. I was a compulsive liar, and I really cared about optics. And as time is worn on, that is shifted, 180 degrees. Like now the truth is so much more important to me than anything else. And and it's not that I don't care about optics anymore, it's just that I'm not willing to sacrifice the truth for optical purpose.
Okay.
So I think that's what friends would say. I hope that.
Hmm. Which is very interesting. I mean, you mentioned 20 years ago you'd answer this question in a way different. So 20 years ago you seem to have had some sort of idea of who you want to be and what you want to become, but now that has been 20 years later is a little bit more blurry. So
Isn't that
sometimes
funny?
the more clarity we get, the more entangled things become in a way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's like you said earlier, every problem solved just yields a new problem. Like 20 years ago, who I wanted to be was just wealthy. And then you get to that and realize like, oh, that's not an end. It's
yeah.
not an end unto itself. It's a change of context for sure. And it's also obnoxious to hear. I remember being a young man, and I remember people saying the words, money won't make you happy. And I remember how upset that made me. Because when you're poor, that's it's just, you know what I mean? It's like there's a visceral response to that.
Yeah.
And now here I am, and were they right? Yeah. And did that stop me from, pursuing that? No. And if I'd go back, would I change that pursuit? No. So I don't like telling young entrepreneurs that. I think young entrepreneurs need to pursue the thing that they feel intrinsically motivated towards, because there's a reason for that motivation. Now, if you can puzzle out the motivation along the way, more the better. But it
Mm,
doesn't mean that it'll take the motivation away. It just might provide clarity around why you want what you want. To
mm,
put that in clearer terms, as when I was very young, I started making more money than I should have been making at the time, and I did silly things with it. I bought the big house on the hill and this stupid car, and I always picked up the check. And then when the economy collapsed here in the States,
mm,
I had a foreclosure and a repossession and massive amounts of debt. And I realized I actually don't want money for those things. I want money for security. And so I think that level of clarity was really, really helpful.
hmm I think what I've learned with having a business, that a business puts you in a situation where it changes you in a very, very fast way, and sometimes you can't keep up with the change that you're seeing or have to make in order for you to sustain your business and to sustain the people that you employ or collaborate with. I think it puts you sort of like a fast track. Whereas if you're an employee, and there's nothing wrong with that, you're in a bit of a safer space because some decisions, to some degree, are being made for you. Whereas when you have your own business, you need to make your own decisions. You need to generate your own income. You need to generate your own revenue for yourself, and again for the people around you. I think that changes you in so many ways, in so many levels. Not sure if you share the same perspective or have something different than what I'm sharing.
I agree. There's a Douglas Brackman wrote a book called Driven. It's what we named our mastermind after. And I think that's what you're referring to. I think you're referring to people that are driven. And what Brackman found was that there's an epigenetic difference, physiologically speaking, in entrepreneurs when compared to the entire rest of the population. Entrepreneurs experience dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, which is the chemical cocktail for love. They experience that in pursuit of a goal. And he calls it the hunter brain. We, you, me, everybody who owns a business, we're receiving the chemical rewards of productive pursuit or of productivity whilst in pursuit. And interestingly, and maybe it's a little devastating, when we achieve the goal, those chemicals go away, which means we get depressed. And that's only 10% of the population. 90% of the population, the employees you're referring to, which is this, because it's 90%, you would term this as normal.
Yeah.
They experience that same chemical cocktail when they achieve a goal, which is probably the way it should be. So you and me are broken. We're only happy when we're on the hunt, hunter brain. Farmers are happy when they're reaping what they sow.
Yeah.
And I think that knowing that is really helpful because it allows you to, at a minimum, at least gamify the situation.
Mm-hmm. And I resonate a lot with that because the further you go, or at least the further I go, I'll make this personal because it is. The further I go, the more restless you become.
Mm-hmm.
So the more difficult it becomes to stop. Sometimes even when you run well, you want to do stuff, you want to achieve stuff, because as you're mentioning, it's like that hunter brain, right? You need to keep going, otherwise you feel bad in general. And for simplicity, you feel bad
Yeah.
about it. You might feel that sometimes I feel that I'm not accomplishing enough, that I'm falling behind, that I should do better, that I need to be better. So you just keep going. And something that I've been pushing myself to do is learning in the past years is learning how to rest.
Mm.
And which is more difficult than it sounds. It was a little bit over than a year and a half ago, and I was giving out this workshop when a client. It was about productivity, and I was speaking about sleep and how beneficial it is, and I felt a little bit. I felt that I wasn't practicing what I preach because I was sleeping at that time 3 hours every night. So, and I felt quite energetic because I got used to sleeping so little at that point in time. But I felt like a hypocrite of sorts. So I shared this with the group with the room, and I told them, and I had a series of workshops with these individuals, and I told them, listen, every week I'm going to increase my sleep with an hour, and I we had I started off with 3 hours, and I believe I had something around 10 weeks of workshops. I managed to bring it up to 6 hours,
Wow.
and I used to show them my stats on my Garmin watch to keep myself accountable and credible as well. So it's a challenge that I did with them, but it also showed me how you build a small community around you in a way, and you build trust. Because sometimes, when, at least in my position, since we are training or coaching people, people might hold a high degree of you, or think that you are the textbook kind of guy, where sometimes things don't work out well, and sometimes we fall from the wagon as well. It's just about how we respond to it. not sure if you can share a similar experience to that.
So I like a lot of what you said. The thing that occurs to me is that there's a resistance from most people that try to lead in letting people see them fall.
Mm.
It's like I'm supposed to be the expert, I'm supposed to be the guru, I'm supposed to, you know what I mean? I'm supposed to know the answers. And I like what you did because it's vulnerable. And I actually think that's what real leadership is. It's not I've got everything figured out. I'm smart. I'm the ivory tower. And I actually think this comes from academia more than anything else. It's like I'm the professor.
Yep.
I got the degree. I did the thing. You listen to me. I'm smart. You're dumb. I wrote the book. You didn't. You take notes. I speak. You listen. Right. And we're all kind of taught to learn that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so then when we move into real life, I think we sort of assume that is the framework. And it's a horrible framework. And when you look back, dude, I look back on the people that try to teach me. It's the fun moniker. It's like those who can't do teach. And in those confines, in the hyper academic confines, that tends to be true. But then when you move into business, I think the best way to teach is to let other people watch you do it poorly. Like watch me fall flat on my face. And most importantly, watch me get up. And I like the way that you did it too. You showed them the data. It's like, here's the data for my Garmin watch.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm doing poorly. Here's where I'm not, necessarily executing on what it is that I'm telling you that you need to do. So I think that's great. I like ready, fire, aim business styles.
Yeah.
Like I don't really believe the older I get, and dare I say, the more successful I get, the less I believe in business plans or, level 10 EOS meetings or annual retreats. Like I believe very strongly in goal setting.
Yeah.
I have a religious commitment to goal setting. And then if you want to talk to me about anything that's going to happen a quarter from now, it's a waste of my time. You know what I mean? Especially in the ecosystem that I work and live in, it's a waste of my time. There's nothing that you and I, from a prognosticative perspective, are going to be able to identify 91 days from now that I feel equipped to plan, to ready for, to like, yeah. So then it ends up being, let's build this plane while we fly it, which means you have to be, messy, nimble, let people see you fail and fall. I think that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I think planning that so much in long term, I think would be missing out in a way that if I know how I would transform or think 90 days from now, which is 3 months, it means that throughout those 3 months, either I learned nothing or wasn't open enough to learn during the process. So I like your analogy. It's trying to build or make out the plane while you're flying it, because I think short-term goals and that level of consistency is like the compounding effect, right? They stack up over time, and I think it's good to have a good like line of trajectory in a way, and that you pursue that.
I agree.
Which means that you might need to have a bit of an idea of where you want to get to. So how do you determine where you want to get to if you don't have that foresight, if that makes sense?
I wouldn't challenge anything that I feel like we're aligned. That's, that goes back to me to goal setting. I think that where goal setting meets planning is the tangible endeavor, right? Like when I say that, I mean like the things that we actually do.
Mm.
Goal setting and planning it's a fun discussion because so often, and I see this in my own life all the time, and I see it in other people's lives more because it's easier to, it's
Yeah,
biblical, right? It's like point out the splinter in your neighbor's eye.
definitely.
People have a goal and then they do things. And in my experience, the likelihood that the things that they're doing have anything to do with that goal. It's so disparate and so unlikely.
Yeah.
And what's really even more interesting is their ability to justify this thing that they're doing that has nothing to do with this goal. Like we've all made a mastercraft out of explaining why we have to do this thing first. I like Bobby Fischer teaches chess. If you like, I love chess. Not to say I'm good at it, but it's such a great microcosm for life in so many ways, and just a great analogy. And Bobby Fischer was one of the greatest that's ever played. And what's really cool about Bobby Fischer, and that a lot of people don't know, my brother taught me this. Bobby Fischer was a great chess player, but only because he was an extraordinary pattern finder. I don't know what the word would be. His ability for pattern recognition outpaced any human ever measured or something. I'm getting the gist wrong, but the specifics right. Like they measured Bobby Fischer's ability to match and identify patterns, and he was absolutely off the charts. Which that's not the same thing as chess, but you can see why it would help in chess. And he had some really interesting thoughts and theories about things. The thing that's really fun about Bobby Fischer teaches chess is most people who play chess have an approach that isn't checkmate. So if I play chess with you, I'm going to try to take down your pawn wall, or I'm going to try to take down one of either end of your castles, your rooks. Okay. I like to eat a side of your board and then move my way in. And most people who play chess have something like that. It's like, I'm going to try to take down your bishops or take down your knight or stop your queen's gambit or whatever it is. And Bobby, when he writes, he's like, every move should be a move towards checkmate. Every move should be you trying to kill or capture the king. That's chess. Everything else is superfluous to the endeavor. So to go back to what we're talking about, goal setting and planning, every move should be a move towards the goal. And if it's not, change the plan or change the goal. I spoke to a close friend of mine very recently, a few days ago. He asked me for some advice on life. And I was like, well, dude, like you had $1 trillion. What do you do tomorrow? And he's like, I want to live in a cabin in the woods. He's like, I want to be around nature. I want to be in a cabin. I want to be, and I'm like, just go live in a cabin in the woods, dude. What is stopping you? You know what I mean? Like there's nothing. And then it's instant. It's like, oh, well, life, career, people. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I think instead, how about you just go hit checkmate? And it's easy for me to say from the outside looking in. And I think that there's so much wisdom there. Have you ever heard that story? I think Stephen Covey tells it in 7 Habits about the Mexican fisherman.
No, not really.
Harvard business graduate, hyper successful entrepreneur, kind of, the new aristocracy, let's say, Manhattanite, very wealthy person, lives in New York, but is going to go on vacation. Okay, so here's this guy, ivory tower, 80 hours a week, crushing life, goes to Mexico. He's on vacation with his wife, goes to Mexico. He's walking along the beach, and he sees this Mexican fisherman. It's about 2:00 in the afternoon, and the fisherman's coming in for the day. And the Harvard business graduate entrepreneur guy goes, what are you doing? And the Mexican fisherman's like, I'm done fishing. And the Harvard business grad is like, dude, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. And the Mexican fisherman's like, I know, I caught enough. Like I caught enough. I'm going to be able to eat today and sell enough fish to make enough money so that, my day's worth of the rent is paid, and, we've got what we need. And, and the Harvard grad's like, well, then what are you going to do? And he's like, probably going to go home, maybe make love to my wife, spend some time with my kids, have a nap, go out to dinner with some friends, go dancing. And the Harvard grad is like, you are wasting your life away. What are you out of your mind? And the Mexican fisherman's like, well, what should I do? And he's like, go back out there and catch more fish. And the fisherman's like, well, then what? And he's like, well, then when you come in and you have a surplus, you sell that surplus, you take the money that you're earning and you bank it. And the Mexican fisherman's like, then what? And he's like, you keep doing that, dude. You do that day in, day out for weeks and months and years. And then the Mexican fisherman's like, and then what? And he's like, then you can buy a new boat and you can hire other fishermen who can go out and catch more fish. And the Mexican fisherman's like, and then what? And he's like, then you have a conglomerate. Like you have a real fishing operation. And then you can move in, at that point, you're making enough money to where you move up to where I am in Manhattan, where we do all the commodities trading, and you become a real player in the fish market. And the Mexican fisherman's like, and then what? And he's like, then you start making real money. And you work to build this empire of yours so that you've got like real, actual, tangible wealth. And the Mexican fisherman's like, then what? And he goes, dude, then's the payoff. Let me tell you what happens. Then you get to move to a coastal city where you don't have to work any longer. You do whatever you want to do. You spend all your day fishing until you want to come in. You can make love to your wife and go out to dinner with friends and spend all night dancing. And it's a silly story, and it's more or less what we're all doing. You know what I mean? It's like, move to checkmate. Go do the thing now. And so I don't know. I don't know if that resonates or not. That's also why I hate planning.
But it makes sense in a way that it goes back to what you mentioned earlier on, Kasim, is that money gives you security, but at the same time, as ironic or silly as it sounds, it's a false sense of security too.
Right.
Because what we truly enjoy in life are the simple things, or the things that make us happy. It can be reading, it can be swimming, it can be fishing, it can be anything. So what you're saying is that why don't you do that already?
Why don't you just go do it now? Yeah.
And that's something that I've discussed in previous episodes as well. One compromise that I'm doing, because I'm still one compromise that I'm doing with running my business, because I work full time as well. So I'm an employee and a business owner. So I'm juggling both. And one compromise that I'm doing is that I'm deliberately building my business slowly, because I want to have a good balance between enjoying life and working. So I do work hard, at least to my standards. I do work a lot of hours, but to me, I have a balance. I have time to spend time with friends, with family, with my partner. So I try to achieve that kind of balance. The compromise, as I said, is that my business grows slower. And to me, that's a fair compromise. So for some people, it might be too slow. It might not be as fulfilling. But I asked myself the question, okay, what do I value in life? Okay, I value building things. I value helping people in the process, but I do want to enjoy life on my own terms as well. So how can I hit those points with one move? And so far, that is the answer that I arrived to. Will that be the same in 5 years' time? In 10 years' time? I don't know. I don't have a plan for that. But right now, that is fulfilling me in a way. And you made me think of that. Is that sometimes we dramatize things in our heads in a way that we have one main definition of success, which is to make money. And going back to your point as well, sometimes that is fulfilling, or if it's so fulfilling, it might be for the short term. And same like with everything in life, even if you do your hobby, I'm guessing that you enjoy reading. You
Yeah,
can read all
desperately.
day, but at some point you need to stop to do something else, right?
Right.
So sometimes even too much of a good thing can be too much. It's
What's funny about reading for me is it's only fun when it's a break.
yep.
Like when I have those days where I spend all day reading, it gets to a point to where it does feel like a chore, and I don't like having books that I have to get through. So I like a lot what you're saying, because I agree with it in its entirety. And I think the way you're building your business is exactly right. I think the advice that we give to young entrepreneurs, burn the boats, go all in, bet on yourself, it's horrible advice. It's horrible advice. Like the benefit you have as an employee is, number one, obviously financial satiation. Number two is you're learning, you're growing your network, you're building yourself as a person, and you have your needs met. And then you can build your business and build your business and build your business until you know that your business can meet your needs, and then you can scale down your employment. But to tell somebody, stop doing this and then start doing that, it's it's too dangerous. There are too many risks, and it just fails too often. So I like your thesis and I like your approach. I think it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And off mic, we had a very, very brief conversation, and I commented on the collection that you have behind you, and we briefly discussed that a collection is an extension of one's identity. But I'm also now reflecting on the fact that a business is also an extension to one's identity.
Isn't that
So how
true?
we run our business, it should be run on our terms and the way we like it to be run in a way, because it's an extension to our identity.
Mm.
No, I never thought of it that way, to be honest. So I'm finding this conversation quite reflective on that front.
Yeah.
Um, Kasim, what's your? It's a bit of an obvious kind of question, but what's your favorite book and why?
Fiction. My favorite book is Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. Uh,
Okay,
it's the closest he got to an autobiography. And to be honest with you, I love the book just because it reminds me of me. Like if it's about a poor kid who gets saved in a way, and that's a fun just truth to my story is in David Copperfield, he comes from no money really. He ends up having to work at this bottling plant, which is true for Charles Dickens. It's child labor, it's slave labor, and he's putting these bottles, these labels on these bottles, and he just knows like this is not for him, and yet there's no way out. And he has a wealthy aunt that comes and just decides to save him for a reason that is hard to even kind of puzzle out outside of the fact that she just can. Um, and then he goes on this sojourn that is his life, and what I like about it too is he's not a very noble character. Like the interesting thing about David Copperfield is most of the things that happen to him, and it's really just him observing how they happen to him, and he kind of Forrest Gumps his way through life. It's very idiosyncratic as a literary character, which is also why I think the book didn't really, most people haven't heard. It's definitely not Dickens' best work or most cited. People talk about like Great Expectations or Oliver Twist or any other than that one actually.
yeah.
Um, and it felt reflective of my experience. Like I don't like the word self-made because I didn't come from money. Nobody gave me money, but gosh, did I have so much help. I had business mentors and even employees that took a shot on me instead of working elsewhere, or clients that hired me when I probably wasn't the best option. I really felt that part of the story. There's something about that book that I think is just very resonant for me. So that's probably more of an answer than you wanted. If you want a nonfiction answer, I like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, which I cited earlier.
Okay.
Covey makes some points that, especially in the entrepreneurial forum, the difference between the personality ethic and the character ethic, the difference between quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 activities, the importance of being proactive. Man, if you read that book and just
Not
took
yet.
1% of it, like that to me is the needle mover in business.
Haven't read it yet, but I will add it to my reading list. Unfortunately, I know that I will probably offend you a little bit. I'm not an avid reader.
Wait, say it
uh,
again.
I'm not an avid reader.
Oh, that's okay. Most people aren't. And I also, it's funny, we shame non-readers. There's nothing wrong with that. Reading is new. On an anthropological scale, reading is, I think, 5,000 years old, maybe. And
Hmm.
global literacy is new. It's 100 years old. Most people learn by listening. It's how we're built.
Yeah.
So I think reading is, in many ways, I'm mildly autistic and I have ADD, so reading is helpful for me because I get to focus on a thing and zero out the world. But no, I don't. I actually don't think reading is the most productive method of learning, and I think that's okay.
Hmm.
You just got to lean into that. Like whatever works for you, go do that thing.
What I appreciate about reading, and I don't shame reading, it's just as you nicely put it, um, is the way I absorb knowledge is more through visual cues and auditory ones.
Mm-hmm.
But what I appreciate about reading is that it gives you time to think and reflect on what you're reading. so you can digest knowledge and process knowledge in a, for a lack of a better term, slow way. It gives you
Yeah.
time. I think it gives you time. Reading gives you time to process and to really make the information that you're absorbing your own.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're watching and listening a video, for example, or listening to a podcast, sometimes things move so fast that you might have to go back a little bit or listen to it again and again and again until it hits. Whereas reading, I think it sticks more. At least that's my interpretation of it. I might be completely wrong on this, but that's how it seems to me.
Yeah, it does I mean, I think it depends on who you are. I like there's a symbiosis between reading and writing. First I read, then I write. I read and then I journal. And
Okay.
that's for me what sticks. Is if I read it, then I write it, I've now captured it. The danger to that is to the point that you've made, or I think we're kind of marshaling towards. When I read something, it's interesting because it feels like, when you read, it's you taking somebody else's words but putting them as thoughts in your head. And it's
Yeah.
really easy to confuse those as your thoughts. And so the thing that I've struggled with, and I think I'm getting a little bit better at as I get older, is not accepting what I read as truth, holding it at arm's length long enough to decide, like, do I really believe that or agree with that?
Hmm.
And I mean, what does that say about me? In that I'm maybe just a literary driven sheep. Um, but yeah, I like listening to podcasts and watching videos because it makes that part of the participatory endeavor easier for me.
Mhm.
Whereas reading, I feel like I'm getting hooked up to the matrix and I'm just pouring this information in my head, and that's why I think I need to be so discerning with who I read, because it better be good information.
Yes. Yeah, and it brings you to something that you're quite familiar as well, AI. And I've literally had this conversation today. I think as beautiful as AI is, it is creating also a bit of a challenge to distinguish between what's actually good or talent in terms of people and in organizations to what it's scripted or AI generated. And I think we have to develop a better eye to make a distinction
Mm.
from real talent, real advice, and the truth, essentially. And I was having the conversation literally today about just it was a very light conversation, but it made me think. And I think that is one of the dangers of AI. I haven't pondered on that thoroughly, I would say, because it's still something new. So I need to see more, let's say. But that's definitely something that we need to be aware of.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. It's interesting because I don't think that I think we're looking at the biggest labor collapse in human history. And I think anybody that argues with that, I actually don't think understands the forum or is paying attention. This weird the soundbite that, oh, every technological revolution has only created more jobs. The problem
Mm,
with that, the problem with that thinking is every technological revolution before this changed what work was being done. This one changes who does the work.
yeah.
So when robotics catches up to AI, that's more or less it. Here's why I say that. Because in a world where we need to discern between what's AI generated and what's not, I actually think on a long timeline, in the short term, I do agree. I think you're right. In the long term, I think we're going to be looking at two worlds. I think AI kind of goes what I would consider to be like intellectually subterranean. Is that right? Yeah.
I think so.
AI is the foundation, right? It's like everything that needs to be done. We need to grow food. We need to keep the lights on. We need to clean the house. We need to flush the toilet. We need to do these things. That's where I see AI going. And not in a low level either. Like, we need to send satellites into space and keep the satellites up. We probably need to generate power in space because it's more efficient there. And so it's like the productive, the purely productive, the sterile endeavor goes to AI. And then I think it's like oil and water, right? Like the two things separate, where the things that need to be done for the sake of themselves, like playing a piano, and maybe I'm naive, but I don't think we're going to sit there and watch a robot play the piano.
Hmm.
I'd watch you play the piano. You know what I mean? I'd watch you play basketball too. I don't think I'm going to watch a robot play basketball. And I
Hmm.
don't think I'm going to watch a robot paint a painting. I could be wrong. But I think that there's, and I love reading, obviously. Like, I love Brandon Sanderson. He's one of my favorite authors currently. He writes fantasy fiction. And so much of what I love about reading is I just get to think, like, I can't believe this came from a human brain. And no matter how good AI gets, I just don't think there's something soulless about, you know? And so will there be people that try to pawn what AI creates off as their own and fool all of us? Sure, maybe. And they have their own issues to contend with. But I think that AI on a long enough timeline becomes the best thing that's ever happened for humanity, because I think it buys us the one thing that humans haven't had yet and maybe need in order to begin to self-actualize, which is time.
Yeah.
And when we have that time, dude, imagine you wake up in the morning and you don't have to worry about a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your mouth. Like, all that's done by this
Yeah.
robot that's issued to you by the government when you're born. Like, universal basic income becomes a prior prerequisite. People are paid to stay at home and watch Netflix, and some people do. Some people, I think, will squander their time. And some people, hopefully the majority of people, over time, will start to lean in the direction of something like going within and figuring out, what's the thing that I should be doing if doing is no longer tied to revenue generation.
Hopefully, we go in that direction. I'm usually the optimist in the room. In this case, I will be the devil's advocate, let's say. I'm not really sure if humanity as a whole is ready or mature enough in a way to distinguish between what's true and what's not. And where I'm going with this is that we might get confused, we might get numb in a way, as
Mm.
you said. Um, we might end up seeing someone, a robot, play the piano just for the sake of seeing someone because everyone is doing it. But inside, we might not feel fulfilled. So I think this shift, I think that this is going to flip the script in a way that we really have to look inwards because that's the only way to go.
Mm.
If we're not understanding ourselves, if we're not understanding how we can make ourselves fulfilled, and it goes well with what you said about self-actualization. If we're not going to step into or lean into that journey, we will lead unsatisfied lives. Because if revenue is generated for us, if AI is doing things for us and we have time, we need to make sure that we are fulfilling our time with the things that fulfill the heart and the soul, to be a little bit romantic with this, because otherwise we'll be lost. So I'm not sure whether humanity is ready for that journey. I mean, this podcast is all. That's all the podcast is about. So I strongly believe in this. Again, I'm not sure whether we are ready, fully ready with
It
that.
feels like a chicken and egg problem,
Mm.
because I don't know that we'll ever be ready. And I think that once presented with the problem, we're a species that has proven that we need first to have the requirement to rise to the situation before we can. So
Mm.
we're not exceptionally proactive. But when confronted with, and this is confirmation bias, right? Like so
Yeah.
far, we've survived every existential crisis.
Yeah.
It's not to say that we will,
Yeah.
but so far, I think that when confronted with this particular problem, it's, it's so funny. It's Pascal's wager. Are you familiar with Pascal's wager?
Not really. I'm
So
learning so many new things today.
again, I'm just a parrot for other people's thoughts and ideas. Pascal was a philosopher who decided the belief in God was pragmatic, and basically said you should believe in God because if there's a God and you've chosen right, then good for you. Pat on the back, you chose right. Well done. And if there's not, then living as though there is a God does nothing but benefit you anyway. And so you might as well, like, there's no reason, regardless of what is true, all the introduction of a God into your mode of being can only benefit you. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why I think Pascal is wrong. And to take that idea and apply it here, if time, which I think is what AI really buys us, is time. If humanity plus time equals positivity, growth, self-actualization, improvement, empathy, et cetera, then great. If humanity plus time equals Holocaust, death, destruction, genocide, hatred, then we're not going to live long enough to really suffer through it anyway. So I think the only way for us to function, I'll tell you what we're not going to do. We're not going to hit the brakes. We're not going to stop. We're not going to unplug the machine.
100%. Yeah.
So the only way for us to function is as though this is going to be a utopian endeavor. Because if it's not, I actually don't see, it's one or the other extreme, right? Like, I don't see a middle ground. It's either this thing really helps or it really hurts. It doesn't feel like it's going to land in the middle. And there have been other things like that. There have been other human endeavors that have kind of proven to be one or the other. So we'll just have to see how this one manifests.
I think one of the most difficult things we human beings find is finding equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
I think equilibrium is a hard thing to find. I mean, we started this conversation because of that. In your situation, you are accepting more than you would like to in a way, or than you need to, perhaps as well. So we're moving from one extreme to the other. This is like trying to go left when in reality you're going right, or trying to go right when in reality you're going left. You can't do both at the same time. But, or let me put it into practice. Sometimes you're in a situation where you're holding on to many objects, but in order to catch the object that's falling out of your hand, you miss all the other things that are in your hand
Mm-hmm.
and end up breaking more things than you actually saved. So this is reminding me of that situation. Sometimes we tend to go for the most logical option, but at the end, it's not the most, for the sake of the example, intelligent option.
Mm.
So I resonate with what you're saying is like going left and right at the same time is not realistic. At the same time, we're not able to stay in the middle. So in a way, going to one extreme might benefit us. So there's a 50% chance there.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, and we'd have to define terms, right? Like define terms with benefit, because when we get to, let's say that the positive does happen. Let's say that absolute poverty falls to zero. We solve all supply chain issues, that the power issue is no longer an issue.
Yeah.
Freedom of information, freedom of literacy. The U.S. stops just destroying all other countries because we're terrified of the lack of our supremacy. That we do have something like, whatever a person might consider to be proto-utopian. Whatever a person in the 21st century would view as proto-utopian, right? Or pseudo-utopian. When we get there, we'll just have a whole new list of shit that we're sad about, complain about, is wrong, because that's what we did. You know, like the life expectancy of humanity used to be about 30 years, and chances are you were going to be eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger. And if your eye color was different than my eye color, we were definitely going to kill each other. And if you were a female, I was probably going to rape you. I was going to forcibly inseminate you because my biological preconditioning is to just spread my seed by any means necessary. And like, holy shit, were we bloodthirsty, savage animals. And now, if you really look at where we are, you know, the gap in the gain is extraordinary, dude. Like, what we have is extraordinary. And we still just, all we do is talk about, oh gosh, it's so bad. So I think in this proto-utopian world where AI does everything and solves all our problems, and everybody's clothed and everybody's fed and everybody's warm and everybody's safe, we'll just have a whole new host. We'll just keep leveling up our problems. You know, it'll be like, oh, my spiritual journey is so traumatic. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just, we're just never gonna
Yeah.
stop
No, no, no.
finding new. And then we'll be talking about, then there will be some other, something I'm incapable of conceptualizing. There will be some new evolution in this journey that we'll be talking about, like, oh, how is this going to change everything? It's going to solve all these problems. And they're like, yeah, but then, you know, so I just, it's funny because it's actually, interestingly, it kind of comes full circle in the conversation. It goes back to the businessman and the fisherman. Like, if you go all the way back to, let's say, Eden and Adam and Eve, we had everything we needed. And maybe that's the story. That's the religious story, is like, we had everything that we needed. And we have had everything that we've needed this whole time. And we keep creating problems to solve. And it gets better and more efficient and faster and stronger. And, you know, but with that becomes more abilities to destroy ourselves and each other. And it's just all going to circle right back to Eden. And, you know, just people being with the understanding that we are provided for in whatever way that's true. And I don't know, man.
Life is funny in a way.
Yeah, the pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth and
Yeah.
back and forth. But maybe it's not a pendulum, you know. Maybe it's like just this. It's just this spiral. We just keep repeating the story, and then hopefully, like, you know, if you look at this repeat, maybe if you turn it, maybe if you look at it in a third dimension, like if you're looking at the X and Y axis, it looks like we're just, you know, the universe is expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. We're just telling the story over and over and over again. But if you turn it in the third dimension and you look at the Z axis, maybe we're doing it upward.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we're like somehow on an iterative scale improving towards something better. Each time it gets a little bit better. Hope. I don't know.
It's interesting because we can find what we need. We might have what we need already.
Dude, we're
We just
already,
don't know
yeah, we're already checkmated. Isn't that funny?
it.
Yeah.
Might have what we need. And this is where, like, many songs and many books have been written on, you only realize what you have once you lost that
Mm-hmm.
thing that you've lost. So I think it goes back to the equilibrium side as well, is that we just don't know how to stay put and say, listen, I've got this, I'm grateful for it. And there is where gratitude comes in. I think and I think that's a key player. Gratitude is a key player, because unless we're grateful as we're going along, we're missing out. You might know the saying, but I can't recall who said so. There's this kind of saying. I will butcher this, but I'll say it as I remember it. Is people? Some people tend to live in the past, reminiscing the past. Some people tend to think about the future, and they forget to be present. So when they die, they would have never lived neither in the past nor in the future. And because of that, because that's not physically possible to live in the past and in the future, because they weren't present in the moment,
They
essentially,
never live.
they never lived.
Yeah.
So philosophically speaking, This has been quite a philosophical conversation. We might be thinking about a magnificent future ahead, which might lie ahead, and going back to the business plans that we discussed as well, or perhaps thinking about how good we had it in the past that we don't appreciate the present moment, how far we've come, what are we valuing right now, and where we would like to do some tweaks in order to have things just a little bit better. Those goals as well that you've mentioned earlier on. Um, Interesting. I'm. I think this is the most philosophical conversation and podcast episode that I had. So
Nice.
usually our conversations revolved more on the business side of things and on the personal journey of sorts, but we had quite a philosophical um, twist. Uh, Kasim, we're nearing towards the end of our conversation for the sake of the podcast, of course. If I were to give you a megaphone, and with this megaphone you can speak, say one phrase to the world right now, what would you say to the world and why?
Create. I think every human is called to creation. And I think creation can start so small. Maybe it just means to write a tweet. Do the thing you like to do. If you like to tweet, if that's what you do, go write your tweet. If you like to shoot a podcast, go make your podcast. If you want to shoot a video, get a video. Write a book, paint a picture, carve something. I don't know what. I don't know what. Make a birdhouse. I think the closest we get to God is creation. And I think that people that aren't creating are they're putting themselves at a disadvantage, but worse, so much worse. They're putting the rest of us at a disadvantage. Because what you create, it contributes to like the lexicon that is like global consciousness, even if you don't realize it.
Mm.
So I'd love for everybody to just, start now. Doesn't need to be good. It shouldn't be. If you're creating something that's really good, it means you started way too late. There's so much you've held back. So I don't know.
Mm. Trying to do a full circle here. Kasim, what are you trying to create right now for yourself?
Gosh, man, I love building businesses. I can't stop. I have a portfolio of 15 businesses at the moment. It's not, people hear that and they're like, oh, 15 domain names. No, 15 businesses. I have hundreds of employees. I have an ecosystem at this point, focused on 4 categories.
Mm.
Now I like building businesses because I like employing people, and I think that's really important, especially in a post-AI world. I like specifically employing people in emerging nations. I think those of us born in the West have been exposed to a level of opportunity that most people aren't exposed to, and it's because they lost the geographic lottery. There's so much about the geopolitical system that's very unfair. And
Mm.
so if you're in a country that makes entrepreneurship easier, makes access to liquidity easy, I think that I'd ask you to look abroad. I hire out of Colombia, Argentina, South Asia, Eastern Europe, North Africa, and I have some of the best talent I've ever been exposed to in my entire life. And they're extraordinary, and they're talented, and they're grateful. And Western employees they're a lot of things, but they're not grateful. So if you want to experience that, I'd tell you to look abroad. And I've created a framework for doing that. Your listeners can have it for free. They can go to thehirebook.com. There's no paywall. There's no ascension. It's 20 years of my life. It's the only thing I'm world class at is talent acquisition. So if people want to know how to find top talent, step by step with templates, everything they'll ever need. And I think that that's really the key to thriving entrepreneurship is it's not trying to be the best.
Yeah.
Just finding the best and getting out of their way.
Yeah. Sometimes it's about identifying who can do things better than you as well. We can't be good at everything.
Oh, you shouldn't be. Dude, if you're the best in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Very true. And finding talent can be challenging. Definitely, it can be challenging. And talent is subjective as well. Well, maybe what you need right now is a type of someone, is a specific someone. So harnessing talent, I think it's for in the grand scheme of things is an extension. Again, going back to what we discussed, is an extension of your identity, that identity you need to build right now. You might outgrow that person, person might outgrow you, and things can move around in a way. So it's nice that you have an ecosystem as well in that way, because you can sort of like, people can move around as well to different opportunities. Kasim, thank you for this conversation. I wasn't expecting such a conversation. So I think I'm going to have quite vivid dreams tonight, because as I said earlier today, now it's midnight here in Malta. So I have a lot to ponder on. So I'm glad that tomorrow is Friday, so I can sit down and think about what we discussed today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Share the recording when you're done. My team will help promote. And I
Definitely.
appreciate you, Daniel. I'll root for you.